So it seems I'm forced into the position of explaining exactly why the babies are atheists argument is important, because some people seem just determined to not get it, or determined, really invested in it not being true.
Your belief in the truth value of it doesn't make it true. And people are disagreeing with you. It's not like they're being stubborn and just not getting it. They are genuinely disagreeing with you.
But the fact is that babies being atheists is not in and of itself an important argument. It's meant to illustrate a much larger point, namely that atheism or atheist as a designation is much more broad than a lot of people would be willing to admit.
I agree with you on that. Atheism is a very broad term, but I disagree with you on the boundaries. You believe that atheism should be all-encompassing when it comes to non-belief in God or gods. But I would say that an atheist is anybody who doesn't believe in God or gods and decides to call himself an atheist. Otherwise, he does not qualify as being an atheist. Therefore, babies are not atheists because they did not decide to belong to the atheist camp, and so on. You can't force other people to be atheists simply because it fits the definition that you decided to embrace as what atheism actually means.
Some people are very invested, it seems, in believing that atheism is just explicit atheism or strong atheism, where someone has actively said, made an explicit, deliberate choice either to not believe in gods or to say that God is not real.
So basically, you're concerned that people will misunderstand what atheism means and will confuse atheism with what you call strong atheism. So in order to prevent this misunderstanding, you want to call rocks, trees, cats, and babies atheists in order for people not to misunderstand what atheism means.
And I can understand why someone might be invested in that. A lot of theist types would probably be like, oh yeah? Well, prove it then. And if atheism can be something other than declaring God does not exist, well, that kind of yanks that argument right out from under them, doesn't it?
This is exactly the main point of disagreement between me and you, and I assume you and many other people. It all boils down to the burden of proof. The reason you want babies to be atheists is because that way you can shift the burden of proof from atheists and therefore make theists need to prove their position while you don't need to prove your position. I think that it's a little bit cowardly because holding the position, in my opinion, holding the position that no gods exist I'm going to actually say it like this. I have faith that no gods exist, but I have yet to experience or see any evidence for God's existence. Therefore, I do not believe in the existence of any particular God. I think this position is at least equally rational to saying that I don't want to say that God doesn't exist because then I will have the burden of proof on me. Fine, so I have the burden of proof on me. I honestly think that having the burden of proof on you is something that can motivate you to try to come up with arguments against religion. I don't think that we should only be on the defensive, so to speak. I mean, I think that you should also try to prove your own position. Try to find out the truth, what the truth actually is. That is what is important here. So I don't think that hiding from the burden of proof justifies changing the word atheism to mean even people who do not wish to call themselves atheists.
So the fact is, though, that atheism is meant to describe something very specific. Here are theists. Here's everyone who is not a theist. They are atheists. You see? That's the distinction that theism and atheism is meant to describe. It is not meant to describe, here are theists, and here are the people who are saying they are wrong. Here are theists, and here are the people who are against them. That's not what atheism is. Atheism is just not theism. That's it.
The word atheist actually was used differently by different people in different times. It was at no point universal. That's the exact reason why this whole controversy is actually taking place. There was never any kind of universal consensus about what the word atheist means. And I think that's a good thing, because basically what you're trying to do with the word atheist is to make it mean non-believers. Every non-believer is automatically an atheist, including objects and everything. While people can be non-believers for different reasons. Some people can reach the conclusion that God doesn't exist because such and such. Some people can say, well, I have yet to see any evidence for God, so I don't believe that God exists. Some people can say, reincarnation does exist and it does happen, and there is an afterlife, but there is no deity controlling all of this. It's just nature. There could be people who say that the universe is God, but they don't really believe in theism. There could be people who think that universe is a part of a greater being that is God. That is a belief, but it is still not theism. There are a lot of different positions inside of theism and inside of non-belief in gods. I think that atheism is not the opposite of theism. The opposite of theism is non-belief in deities. Now, it's true that there's no word for it. I would actually think that non-believer suits me perfectly fine. Most people would understand what that means if I say I'm a non-believer. It even pretty much doesn't really matter what language you use. Most places, if you say you're a non-believer, people will understand what you mean. But trying to label everything as atheist, I think, just doesn't suit the cause. Some people choose to be agnostic because they simply think that the whole debate between atheists and theists is pointless, because both of them are talking out of their ass, like I said in my previous video, because they think that this thing would never be resolved. God is an unknown. So saying that you don't believe in God or saying that you believe in God are both completely arbitrary, because God is an unknown. This position you cannot consider an atheist, especially due to the fact that such a person is likely to say, no, I'm not an atheist, I'm an agnostic.
So anybody who is not a theist is an atheist. Now, okay, granted, theism is probably a more broad category than most people would like to admit to, because atheism does sort of include things like deism and pantheism as well.
Now, here's a point where I actually do agree with you on. If there was a kind of dichotomy to be made between theism and non-theism, as in two completely distinctive groups, which any individual would be completely easy to label to either camp. If that was the case, then I would agree with you that pantheism, panentheism, and deism all should be included in atheism in that case, because I think that it is a lot closer to atheism than it is theism, in my own personal opinion.
But the fact is that, again, the actual point of the babies are atheists argument is that you don't have to make an explicit choice. You can have implicit atheism, also known as weak atheism versus strong atheism. Strong and explicit atheism are the same thing. You see, if you want atheism, or you want to talk about atheists who are the God does not exist type, who are more the explicit choosers of not being theists, well, then you modify atheism with an adjective, with a qualifying adjective. It's not hard to do. Strong atheist, explicit atheist. It's really simple. But it seems that there are some people who insist that atheism has to just be explicit atheism. And I'm sorry, but I'm trying to actually describe something that does exist in the world. And atheism describes people who are not theists.
I don't think that strong atheist, weak atheist model is very productive, because I don't think that it's really two distinctive groups. The same way that agnosticism is a statement about knowledge, and atheism is a statement about belief. Well, the same thing can be said about strong atheism and weak atheism, because one says, I don't believe in God. That's a statement about belief, and God doesn't exist is a statement about knowledge. So in that same sense, I don't really think that the two groups should be like countering one another, because I could be both. I could be both, the same as somebody can be an agnostic atheist. I can be somebody who doesn't believe in God, but I also say that God doesn't exist. They're not mutually exclusive.
It's that simple. Now, if you don't like atheism being, anything other than explicit atheism, if you don't like the idea of atheism being a broader topic, a broader category than just explicit or strong atheism, then give me another word. I mean, agnostic doesn't fill it. Gnosticism is about knowledge. It's not about belief, where theism is about belief. So agnostic doesn't cover it. So give me another word besides atheism that means this broad category of just not God believers, not theists that I'm describing.
If you're looking for a term to describe non-belief in deities, I would definitely go with non-belief. If theism is the belief in deities, then non-belief would be the opposite of that. Now, I know that that theism and atheism sound as if they should oppose each other and be opposites of one another, but it's not really the case. That's just to make it sound nice, nothing more than that. It reminds me of the episode of South Park where the three different groups of atheists in the future are arguing what they should actually call all atheists. Kind of ironic, actually. I think I should watch that episode again. In any case, they're arguing what they should call themselves, and the otters go, well, we should obviously be called the Allied Atheist Alliance, because then it has 3 A's in it. Well, yeah, atheism and theism do sound as if they should be opposites of one another, but when it comes to what the terms actually describe, I think that using atheism that way would not be very rational.
I've made this challenge to other people, and they just don't take it up. It seems to me that there are some people who are really insistent that there cannot be this broader category of not believing in God. And I have to wonder why.
You don't have to wonder why. People have passed criticisms on you and posted video responses explaining exactly why they have a problem with this. People went into great detail on why they have a problem with this broader definition, including me in this video right now. So yeah, you don't have to wonder why. We can tell you exactly why we have a problem with this.
But this is why I make the babies are atheists argument. This is why it's important, is to show how broad a designation, how broad a category atheism truly is.
Or we can simply face reality, understand and accept the reality that atheists are a tiny minority, and that the reason that atheists are a tiny minority is because the vast majority of the people on this planet are mentally retarded as fuck. This is a fact. And I don't really like this kind of attitude of trying to encompass more people just so you have more people on your side. I don't think that the pursuit of the truth is a popularity contest, or should be. It doesn't matter how many people you have on your side. If you are right, and we are, then you're right. It doesn't matter how many people believe in a true idea. It doesn't change the truth value of that idea.
So to those of you who've been wondering, That's why. Now, there are some of you who say that, well, this brings up absurdities like rocks being atheists because rocks don't believe in a God. Well, they don't, do they? I'm perfectly okay with saying rocks are atheists because I don't think atheism needs an explicit choice. I think that theism needs an explicit choice. Theism is saying, I have decided to believe in a God. And that's the only thing that needs a designation, really. But because we need to distinguish between atheists and theists somehow, because we have to distinguish between those who do believe in a God and those who don't somehow, we need a word like atheist. We need a word that means not theist. So atheism is there. Now, if you want to insist that inanimate objects cannot be atheists, well, okay, fine. I will agree to that qualifier. No problem. Though I'm also perfectly happy to say that rocks are atheists, no matter how absurd you think that is. Because I'm trying to describe. And I'm trying to accurately describe. And what I'm trying to describe are those who are theists and those who are not. That's what I'm trying to describe. That's what the babies are atheists argument is supposed to show. But some people have gotten really caught up in the minutiae and haven't seen this larger picture, which is why I'm spelling it out explicitly here and now.
Although there's a gap between the total amount of people who are non-believers to the total amount of people who consider themselves to be atheists, there is a huge gap there. But I still don't think that alone is enough reason for to try to merge them together and just in order to make atheism look a little bit more buff.
So if people really don't get this after this video, I'm not sure how to help you. But if you do get it and you still argue against it, well then I ask again, give me a word that does describe this broad category that I've talked about in this video.
If you're looking for a term to call people who don't believe in deities, you could call them simply non-believers. If you're looking for a term to describe a group of people who simply reject religious claims due to a lack of evidence, you can call them skeptics. Because I find that more related to skepticism than it is to atheism. The same way that non-belief is more related to non-belief than it is to atheism. Atheism could be more in particular the rejection of the claim that God exists. Or I would say that if you think that God either most likely doesn't exist or doesn't exist, then you're an atheist. But if you're a baby, then you're not an atheist. Because you don't think that God probably doesn't exist, and you don't think that God doesn't exist. You don't think that God does exist. You don't have any opinion about God whatsoever. You could be undecided.
Give me a word that does it better than atheist. Because I don't know of one. And it seems to make the most sense, because with the definition I'm using, you can have everything else that you want to describe. Just modify atheist with strong or explicit. That's all you have to do. So where's the problem? I really don't understand what the problem is, but some people still seem to have one with this definition of atheism, even though the word, the etymology of the word means what we're trying to say. It accurately describes. It does everything you need it to do, and add a qualifying adjective, and it does everything that you want, except allow you to shoehorn the definition of atheism into a much smaller category.
Now, this is a pretty good argument, I think, from an argument from a practical standpoint. Now, when it comes to practicality, I do admit that this kind of method of atheism, meaning atheism, do have several advantages. But on the other hand, it also has a few severe drawbacks. One of the drawbacks, one of the most significant ones that I can think of, is the fact that it involves calling people atheists when they do not consider themselves at all to be atheists. For instance, you're gonna group together a Buddhist with people like Christopher Hitchens. These two don't match and they don't belong in the same category because their non-belief is completely different from one another. The Buddhist believes in a lot of things, just not in gods. While Christopher Hitchens doesn't really seem fond of belief to me. So I don't think that when it comes to belief, this would be a very practical use for it. If you take, for example, somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson, he clearly states that he considers himself to be an agnostic, neither an atheist nor a theist. I think that this is taking a stance when it comes to his label. He would prefer people to label him as an agnostic rather than an atheist, and you're going to force him to be called an atheist simply because it fits into this model that you created.